Not such greedy.
Every time I say, if she hits me, and I block it. Yeah.
Hey, you. We're all a little bit racist. Especially the white people. I hate white people. Especially white people that hate white people.
Where does it say that?
Implicit bias. We're all at least a little bit racist. Come on, Soren. You're gonna find things.
This is a white man that's.
Eric, did you know that we're all a little bit racist?
At least.
At least a little bit.
I'm above that. Well, then I'm above beyond. Well, then I'm above average. I'm very above average. Soren is racist towards normal white men. Right? If you're a pink man, you know. Alright, I'm a white man. You're pretty racist to white man.
You know Andrew? He was like sexy beatboxing. You're supposed to turn that thing. The thing.
Yeah.
What? Are you on shot practice today or are you doing swimming? Swimming's over. Really? When is it over?
State was on state.
We went, I think, on the state. So we got 7 on the state. Who won? Like 16? Yeah. West High. It was goddamn it.
Let's go, Juan.
I came to State Boston this morning to see you, and I saw him, and I was like,
I said, Fulvio, what's
I
your
knew he
favorite
was there,
one?
and I was like, oh shit, I forgot, I got scared.
Your hands are wet. What the heck?
Oh my God.
I think I got it. Stop touching my body.
This is what we were doing though.
I'll touch your body on the wall. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on your pants.
Can I borrow? I'm not gonna use back.
Yeah, no.
Can I?
No. No, you didn't.
I can have one of the other ones. I don't want if you don't get to know me, well, you don't get to see the check.
No.
My friend Juan. Oh, it's gone. It's not great.
Oh. Wow. Nice.
All right, one kind of stopping point. And as you are getting your Chromebooks out, I want to know how your snow day was. Right?
The school district played itself.
Well, Mother Nature played all of us, let's be honest, because it was supposed to like,
It's supposed to be like 12 inches.
well, I didn't read, yeah, I read 6 to 8, but then like we were definitely like toward the bottom of the band, but then it just went up north. I didn't mind it at all.
I'm not gonna guess.
Nope. Yeah, like so many people canceled. It was like it was crazy awesome. But so good. Yeah, Lance. What's that? Yeah, well, Kyle's got it over here, but if we what?
One.
No, I know, but like the yellow thing.
And I didn't 5 of them. It's right there.
What? Oh, you need a charger? Mine's somewhere. Mine's plugged into the wall over here, Lance, if you want to sit on the counter. Whether or not you're interested, I wanted to show you what I spent a lot of time listening to on my snow day. No. Are you familiar with the monkeys jumping on the bed? 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed.
Oh, yeah.
One fell off and bumped his head. Mama called the doctor, and the doctor said no more monkeys jumping on the bed.
Classic.
Well, let me just show you how this comes out from the perspective of a 2-year-old trying to learn things. This is my daughter Miriam. That you can't shoot her straight on, so I'm like around the corner because otherwise she'd stop. But William, will you get the lights so it's easier to hear or see? This is like learning at work. Over and over and over again. Over and over.
That's what you're trying to read.
She just turned 2. So this was, okay, at least this is the monkeys jumping on the bed book. But then she picked up Million, I can't remember the other kid. This is called Million Someone Play Dress Up. And it was the same monkeys jumping on the bed. And then she picked up this book called Gus. It's the same. And if you try to correct her, it's Mama called the doctor, and the doctor said, she's like, no. Like, well, you know better than I do, apparently. I'm 34 years old. Right? I know. She can be teaching this class. She actually, she makes it up as she goes, but she fakes it pretty well. So, with that, slightly indulgent, but I kid you not, over and over and over again. So, we talked last Thursday about nonfiction. Oh, another little personal anecdote that has to do with this. I thought of you all so much. We chatted about how 2018 is an interesting time to study nonfiction. Because it's all fiction. I mean, I don't think it's all fiction. Because remember, fiction, our definition of fiction, should include the idea that it's an imagined story. It's coming from the imagination of the author, which sometimes is not unlike nonfiction. However, fiction demands that we, as readers, enter that world, enter the realism, even if it's a crazy like sci-fi or fantasy, like it could be a crazy plotline, but we have to buy into the world of the story. Nonfiction is totally different, and it puts us a little bit on our heels. It puts us on the defensive because nonfiction really pushes its way into our lives and seemingly looking like something that it may not be. So it is dangerous to define nonfiction as true. It's dangerous to define nonfiction as factual. It's dangerous to define it as real, okay? Because it's like perspective. I think that's a really good way to put it, Nolan, that it really demands that for us to fully understand the genre, we really have to do more work so that we're not like this poor guy that I'm about to tell you about. Who trolled my mom on Facebook. Oh my God, my mom is like the sweetest lady. I'll show you a picture. This is a long time ago, but a picture nonetheless. My mom is a former teacher. She's a retired elementary school teacher. And she's dressed as a clown. What? So here's a picture of my mom. And she is now very into, aren't we cute? Listen.
Probably the only little girl.
I'm like 8. No, she put it right in. That's my brother Nick. And that's my dad. So my mom has, since she's been retired, has gotten really into like defending public education, like arguing about the rights of teachers, that kind of thing, but also has gotten a little bit political. And so she's posted something on her Facebook wall that David McDonald, who grew up in the same hometown, little Independence, Iowa, and is now living in Florida, where all people go.
Sure.
I didn't say. No, she lives in Cedar Rapids. Not bad. But, so my mom was posting, and then this guy responded, clearly opinionated that maybe his point of view is different than my mom's, which is fine. Okay, not that you have space for that too. But what I thought was really interesting is that he cited, or he referenced the fact that, yes, teachers, they really should just stick to teaching. So many of them go off on their opinions, and if you don't agree, you get a bad grade. For instance, in California, it is mandatory for elementary school students to be taught a cross-dressing class.
What?
And I'm like, David, David. You know how some things are too good to be true? Well, there are other things that are too crazy to be true. And so, bless his heart, he probably grew up, not probably, he grew up in an age where there wasn't the internet, and now anything that looks like it should be believed that he finds on Google is like, well, shoot, the children of California, they're all confused. So I responded. I engaged the troll. He has not responded since because I think he's afraid of me. But I had said, David, I appreciate your perspective. What I am confused about, or particularly intrigued by, I think is what I said, is his quote, and then I quoted him, and admittedly, I haven't done much research, but after only brief research, the only thing I could turn up were articles debunking a hoax article that was published on a news media site called The Free Patriot, which doesn't actually exist. So if you had more information about that, I would really be interested. He's like, crickets. You cannot believe everything that you read. He hasn't said anything. He's afraid of you.
I understand why.
I was perfectly respectful. If he drew the implication that I was calling him,
But I mean,
You
hey,
thought
you
it
think
so,
it's true.
I would say you don't.
but I don't need to say you're done if I say all the other stuff.
Exactly, because he's just reading it like, I don't know what this means. So.
And I don't think he probably is dumb. He's lived to a certain age. He's made enough money to retire to Florida, where there's not snow on the ground. He's doing something right. But you can't be the poor soul who opens up a page on the internet and says, "Oh dear." Poor children of California. Makes zero sense.
Fusion.
So, yeah, misdirection at its finest. So listen very carefully. We chatted on Thursday about 3 of the 6 purposes that people, not robots, people write nonfiction. What are 3 of the 6 reasons that people sit down and write nonfiction? To inform. A step beyond to inform is to then expect someone to learn something, so that's to teach, and to sell you on something. So for instance, all of those things, with maybe the exception, well, even including inform. We can't pick up a piece of nonfiction and just say, this author wants nothing from me. At the very least, they want you to come away a little bit more knowledgeable than before. There are 3 more we haven't talked about. So follow this link here.
Miss Bagel,
Mhm.
I had a little bit of trouble with the like not after I submitted my blog, I couldn't find it again.
Okay, I can help you. Yeah, absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, find your way to that link. Y'all fill it up.
I hate yokels.
That made me laugh. He doesn't make me laugh there.
No, that's what they
Well, Y'all food up. Young Olives lift fragrant umbrellas. All right, so 23 of you, which is not nearly enough, have joined.
I joined.
But you're still following the link. You'll see the code down in the bottom corner. But in an effort to give you as little homework as possible, shut up.
Hey.
Rude but true. When I say, like, I want to speed through this to give you as little homework as possible, odds are you probably will have a page and a half to finish and annotate on your own tonight, okay? And we'll talk about that. Just know that I warned you of that so that when I come around and check the annotations tomorrow, it's like, you didn't say it. Yes, I did. I said it. Okay? To persuade is different, but a building block of to sell something. Obviously, if someone is trying to sell you on something, they need to persuade you. But if someone is merely trying to persuade you, they don't necessarily need you to spend money to show that you believe, okay? So I could write a piece of nonfiction in order to convince you to believe something, maybe that you don't already, maybe that you already do. I could also be trying to persuade you to do something. Maybe it's something different than you already do, maybe it's not, okay? Sometimes my audience is going to be already believers, and sometimes they're not. But that's what we have to kind of discern. How does my bias align? All right. Now, this is very critical because when we feel like, in the same way when we're being sold to, when we feel like an author is trying to persuade us of something, first we have to understand what it is that they want us to believe. And secondly, we have every right as consumers of media and text to walk away without believing any of it. Okay, we have to make that negotiation, and that's a really important negotiation to make. Okay. Secondly, sometimes nonfiction is merely trying to express something. So, for instance, a blog post. I have a personal blog, and my idea when I get on my blog and I start writing is to merely put out in the world my observations about life, my thoughts, my feelings, what I understand. It's nonfiction because it is based on the truth of my own reality. Now, I'm supposed to do research with nonfiction, right? Can I use blogs for research?
The answer is no.
why is a blog post, depending on what you're researching, I guess, America, I will give you that point. Depending on what you're researching, why may not be a blog post the best place to get researched material? Morgan?
Because it's like someone's opinion and they're
Okay.
probably citing other sources
Okay,
as opposed to like doing their own. So it's not really like direct information and someone's.
okay,
It would be biased.
yes, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, you're
And research can be done with biased material, you just have to pick the right stuff out of it. Right? Yes. Okay, so where we were all kind of talking about how like this is somebody's opinion and maybe they are putting down the ideas of someone with more expertise than they do. Okay. We have to discern if this is the right expertise we're looking for. Okay. Lastly, nonfiction can be just as entertaining, if not more so, than fiction. A lot of times we think about like, well, if people are picking up a book for entertainment value, they're probably going, well, Wayne doesn't, but they're probably going to fiction. But, okay, but, nonfiction, based in fact, real information, it can be just as entertaining, if not more so. Is anyone familiar with The Onion?
Yeah, what?
What's The
Yeah,
Onion?
it's a vegetable.
No, those are onions. Yeah, hey guys!
Yes.
Hush.
Wait, what was the question?
Louis has some familiarity with a news media, with a nonfiction site called The Onion.
She's like read it a couple times.
Yes.
And she's like told me the like title of some of the articles and it's supposed to be like funny and like it's supposed to be funny, but
Okay, so The Onion is an online and in print, depending on where you live, piece of media that is a satirical newspaper. So satire takes real events, real newsworthy things, and shifts it into the realm of like poking fun of it. Okay, we'll look at a couple of Onion examples. But the thing of it is that The Onion is written in such a way that the tone is so realistic, like it sounds like it's an actual news article. Onion articles have actually even been cited by President Trump's administration. But they're completely based in humor rather than fact. Okay? So the author wants to just simply amuse us, and we've got to understand that that's exactly what they want to do. So, I'm a big fan of BuzzFeed.
Me too.
I don't know what that is.
Chock full of nonfiction. Here's an example. Vote which one you think this represents. 24 things everyone who's in love with Stranger Things will appreciate. Where do we think this falls?
Entertaining.
oh, it
I refuse. Okay, we didn't slide over the fact that you say
Donovan and Jesse and Keith and Lance and Juan and Easton, why are you
come on,
voting?
answer the
Hey,
question.
It was
One.
You didn't.
Okay, final answer. Now get it?
What about this one?
I love Stranger
This is an article. This is an article from Entertainment Weekly.
I do.
And him,
Thanks.
where Stranger Things loses its magic. Despite its charms, Netflix's 1980s throwback series airs in how it treats its most important young characters. It's impossible to talk about Stranger Things, the 8-episode Netflix sci-fi drama series released this month, without talking about all the 80s references. Like the J.J. Abrams film Super 8, Stranger Things is an homage to all things Spielbergian. Broken families, kids having secret adventures on bikes, supernatural beings, government conspiracies, heartfelt endings.
It's basically.
No, you can't do that. He just
Last one.
Was that right?
This one starts not one to stay off a bandwagon. What's the bandwagon effect again? We talked about that last week.
When people do good and then you fake
Because the Eagles won.
When you're a fake
Okay, this is, my friend has a really good example of this. So maybe you've lived in like the greater Philadelphia, New Jersey area all your life. But now, suddenly, my friend, what have you decided?
Since the Eagles won the Super Bowl and the Patriots lose, suckers. Everybody wants to join the Eagles.
So now I'm like getting all the gear, when before I couldn't have cared less. The bandwagon effect is because of something's perceived popularity, climbing, then people get on the bandwagon, people join in with the popularity even though their hearts may not be in it. So we talked about that with this article when the Stranger Things trailer came out for the season 2, and over 500,000 people just during that commercial were tweeting and Facebook posting and all sorts of other social media related interactions about Stranger Things. Well, when this article talks about that, it sort of makes it look like, well, if everybody's doing it, why aren't you? Okay.
Because I'm original.
Because that show's done.
So, not one to stay off a bandwagon, I sat down to watch and emerged 2 days later without even a shower and sleep deprived, eyes wide with a what the hell did I just watch sort of blaze. Now I'm here, ready to go to the ends of the earth to convince the small minority of you who haven't watched yet to buckle up and get ready for the ride of your freaking life. Here are all the reasons I'm obsessed with this show, and you should be too. Number 1, the kids in the show might just be the best actors on the thing.
I think I've heard of that.
That's not true.
I ever heard of.
You're in a big cage.
They ever heard of that writer?
You even heard of Ronald Reagan?
Kenny.
He's still on the planet.
Everyone heard the term.
Time.
Robert Downey heard of
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you a poll, okay? First of all, this one appears to be, that you appear to be the most convinced that this shows entertainment, that the main driving purpose behind this particular nonfiction is entertainment. What about just this glimpse of this would point to that? That the purpose of this is to entertain.
The dude is no teeth as a white.
The picture, okay, so the use of visual.
Yes.
That would help.
He reminds me of Toothbrush from High School.
Hey guys, I was already reading the article to students in 6th and 5th period. So like count on more than enough homework, more than I certainly wanted to assign to you. What else about this particular article shows entertainment? Yeah.
Says like people like this will appreciate.
Okay. So the articulation of who the audience is for this piece of media. The author is saying it's already for those who love Stranger Things. And if you love Stranger Things, you're going to appreciate this even more. That's playing on the emotional value, counting on the fact that this might be stress relief, this might be a break from your day. Like, you already are going to like it because you already like Stranger Things. Now, where we were falling on this and this, we're a little bit tied. Okay? So, for instance, most of you thought that where Stranger Things loses its magic was express. Whereas most of you thought that the third example was persuade. Why did you decide that? Joe? The third one.
Well, that was the one where he was like, he says that he's trying to convince the rest of like the small minority of people that don't want it.
Okay, so the word convince was the tip off for you. Okay, what other phrases in this world, in this article, pointed you to the fact that this was an instance of persuasion at work? Gabe?
You should be too.
You should be too. Okay, try to cultivate a bandwagon effect. Whereas this article here, where Stranger Things loses its magic, 5 of you said persuade, and I bet it was because of the title. Where Stranger Things loses its magic. Explain to me the bias that you can sniff just in the beginning of this Atlantic article. Where does Lenica Cruz fall on Stranger Things herself? Gabe?
I don't know, she don't like it.
She doesn't like it.
She doesn't like
She
the
thinks
magic.
there's
Does anyone want to disagree with that, Oliver?
She doesn't say that she doesn't like it. She just says that she disagrees with one part of it.
Okay, so in fact, she says despite its charms. So she thinks it has charms. She thinks the show is charming in some way, but there is some drawback that how it treats its most important young character is not necessarily copacetic.
Who's the most important young character?
Okay,
Actually,
so put this away and pull out a pencil, please. We're going to try to catch you up as quickly as possible here.
we have
Ladies and gentlemen, as per the agenda, I'm going to endeavor to get you started on this article. And as I do, you are annotating for the same questioning stances, so the same questions that we used when you were reading about the lady who read nothing but multicultural or diverse authors for a year. Check your file. Okay? Now, I want you to mark the things that the author of this article, Janae Desmond Harris, says, or writes rather, that surprises you. What do you not expect? Hey guys, I am going to take a deep breath, but right now I feel like I'm teaching a 6th grade class, and there is a reason why I work in a high school. So I don't have to teach 6th grade classes. You're going to mark with an exclamation point what surprised you. Okay, maybe because you didn't expect to see it printed. Maybe you make some inferences about who she is as an individual, and maybe you're surprised at the fact that this is coming from her, which is totally valid. A question mark will show where you believe that she's assuming that you know something that you don't. That could be in the form of vocabulary, that could be in the form of a reference to something that you just aren't familiar with, okay? Lastly, you're going to put a star next to something that challenged or confirmed what you already knew. challenged being, like I used the example last week, if I am staunchly against the death penalty, and I am reading something that, as I'm reading, I can discern that there's some bias that this person is for the death penalty. Well, they can challenge my point of view by presenting maybe statistics or presenting an opinion that makes me, like, I'm not going to change my mind necessarily. It's not that convincing, but I hadn't thought about it in the way that they put it down there. So, point you. To confirm what I already knew means that they're just spoon feeding me what we called last week my confirmation bias. That I am going to a piece of media because I want my own agenda, my own belief, my own opinions reflected back at me. I want to read nonfiction with a mirror instead of a window. Okay, so you're going to mark that as you go. You will also be going through a brief quiz tomorrow so that you actually do understand, like a comprehension quiz. Do you get it? Okay. So whereas I only want you to annotate, maybe take a couple of notes just so you really are engaging so that you know what this is about. Okay, so I'm going to get, perfect. I've got 5 minutes to get you started and then you'll be on your own for the end. Implicit bias means we're all probably at least a little bit racist. There's a word for why we're all probably at least a little bit racist, even if we don't want to be. Implicit bias. It's a term that describes what's happening when, despite our best intentions and without our awareness, racial stereotypes and assumptions creep into our minds and affect our actions. It seeps into just about every aspect of life, including areas like criminal justice that can have deadly consequences. 30 years of neurology and cognitive psychology studies show that it influences the way we see and treat others, even when we're absolutely determined to be and believe we are being fair and objective. So by the way, as I am a grown woman and am using this article to teach you, it does not mean that I am immune from being surprised by stuff. I thought it was really surprising that this has been studied for 30 years, and the first I even heard this term, implicit bias, was last year. Me being in the field of education of all things for at least 8 years of my life, I really assumed that I would have known something that seems to be seeping into every living thing. Seems like a pretty important thing to know about, and I was surprised that it even existed. That's why implicit bias has been called the new diversity paradigm, one that recognizes the role that bias plays in the day-to-day functioning of all human beings. Here's what you need to know about how it works, how it permeates American life, from education to health to policing, and why it can be even more insidious than the kinds of racism that are most familiar to us. What is implicit bias? The first step in understanding how implicit bias works is to understand the general concept of implicit bias, which can shape the way we think about lots of different qualities: age, gender, nationality, even height. You can think of it generally as thoughts about people you didn't know you had. Two leading scholars in the field, Mahzarin Banaji and Anthony G. Greenwald, capture it well in the title of a book that they wrote about the concept. It's called Blind Spot: Hidden Biases of Good People. What do these blind spots look like, and how do they shape behavior? Well, if you have a stereotype about Asian people that labels them as foreign, nobody needs to pack up. I dismiss you not the bell. I'm done. If you have a stereotype about Asian people that labels them as foreign, implicit bias means you have trouble associating even Asian American people with speaking fluent English or becoming Americans or being American citizens. If you've picked up on cultural cues that women are homemakers, it means that you might have a harder time connecting women to powerful roles in business despite your conscious belief in gender equality. The effects aren't always negative. If you have a positive attitude about your alma mater or the school that you went to, implicit bias could mean you feel more at ease around someone who you know also graduated from there than you do around people who went to other schools. I will see you tomorrow. Finish the article and you're going to annotate, which is what I'm checking first thing.